Great science fiction writer, Kurt Vonnegut. I was into eliciting strategies, and I couldn't resist. I called him on the phone. He's listed in the phone book. Isn't that neat? I never thought he would be, but I looked up. I just happened to be in the town that he writes that he lived in. So I looked in the phone book, and sure enough, there was Kurt Vonnegut. Only it said K. Vonnegut, right? K. period Vonnegut, Jr. And I said, cool. So I dialed the phone, and I said, Kurt, I said, I have a question for you. And he went, who is this? I said, that's not important. I said, what I want to know is when you write a science fiction thing, I said, how do you know what to write? And he said, well, it's really pretty simple. He said, what I do is I think up the most bizarre circumstance that I could think of, right? And then I go back to the present reality that we live in, and I write a story that logically would get to the bizarrest thing I can think about. He had a book where he starts out, you know, he goes, I'm the last president of the United States, and I'm a monster, and I'm sitting here in the Empire State Building surrounded by 1,000 candlesticks. And he said, but let me start at the beginning. And he went back to the present day and showed how one human being could actually get to the point where they were the last president of the United States. I was hoping we would get to that soon. I don't think we should have a president. I think what we should have is a sergeant at arms, what we should have is the United States Monitor. And we should change it every other day or so, just like we did in elementary school, the chalkboard monitor. I think we should have the country monitor. They should come in and go, okay, for the next 5 days, I'm going to make sure that everything is wiped clean. For example, the national debt would be good. The U.S. now that we stopped backing up our money with anything. Now the only thing that's left is promises from politicians. This makes me very nervous. They go, here, this is really worth something because it's based on the fact that I promised that even though we don't have anything to back it up, it's going to be okay. But you have to remember, at one time, there was no money at all. Now look how much there is. The stuff's everywhere. So probably in the future, there's going to be more. There might be less euros, but there's going to be more money of one form or another. Everybody was worried about that this morning. What will the euro do? Personally, I never thought it was a good idea to start with. I don't think having the same currency in any country, in every country, makes it any fun. I think we should actually have lots of currencies in every country. And that would make it more fun. We should have California money. In fact, I think they should have LA money and San Francisco money. Disneyland has its own money. You just can't spend it in other places. But if they began to honor it, they go, oh, Disneyland money. I could take this money, and then when somebody comes in and buys dinner, I could give them free tickets to Disneyland. Here, you can go on the monorail. You just had a big dinner, go to Disneyland. Pretty soon, we would end up having things that went everywhere. I'd like to print my own money, but I'd get in trouble for it. They would be called trance dollars. And if you got a certain amount of trance dollars, then you could buy a trance, right? Because if you have 50 transonomies, then that's not enough for a whole thing. Because if you have to have 1,000 transonomies in order to go deep, deep, deep into an altered state. Now, the altered state that I want you to create for yourself is one where you literally let your unconscious go back to your successes and put them in order. So you zip through success and then begin to launch into the future. And think of the things that are on your list, the things that are goals, because a goal is different than how you're going to get there. For example, I know lots of guys one guy told me his goals, and I liked this. It was really kind of nice. He wanted to have a big house, and he saw in the future, 5 years, his family really happy, and there was a boat and a big motorhome and a Mercedes and a big estate and a swimming pool. And I asked him, I said, are you in the picture? And he went, no, I'm not. And I said, so you took out a lot of insurance and died, and your family bought these things. And he said, well, that's one way to do it. And I said, because he was sent to me by a doctor, and the doctor had said if he didn't lower his blood pressure, he was going to explode. And of course, it makes it very hard to get things done if you explode. Doesn't matter where you explode either, whether you explode in a vein or you explode in your heart. The reason you want to learn to relax and have good feelings is twofold. One, you'll look better. Two, you'll feel better. 3, you'll live longer. And 4, when you feel better, you'll always get more done. And there's so much to do on this planet. Some of you had goals that were about your businesses, and I understand that. When I ran a company, I always wanted to find ways to make everything work better for everybody. I thought it was kind of like being a big babysitter, to tell you the truth. And then I had all of these people that would come in and go, well, we have this problem, these people are not buying this thing. And I go, okay, well then we need to make it more enticing so that it's easier to sell. So let's improve the product. And people would always look at me like, so we have to improve the product? And I go, yeah, because if people don't want it, there's 2 things that could be wrong with it, either the product itself or the description of it. Because I know that when they try to sell me furniture on TV and they say, furniture, come in and buy now, and no interest for a year. And I was going, oh, forget about it, I'll think about it next year, I mean, there's so much amnesia inside of advertising. It's absolutely wonderful. We are protected from ad agencies forever. But then every once in a while they come along and I can tell they've been reading my work. I used to work for an ad agency from time to time. I made Clorox commercials. And Clorox too, which made it even that much more fun. Because here's a product that has all the right phonemes to begin to make trance inductions. And show a big bottle of Clorox and say, Clorox, get your clothes brighter and brighter and brighter. And big, bright, white clothes. And we keep getting it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm going, for colored clothes, you can use Clorox too. Arc, arc, arc. Sales of Clorox shot up, but then they used a different commercial and made them go right back down. Because they don't want to use the same commercial too long or one like it. It might be helpful. And they don't do that in big corporations. They have a rule that says if something is working, change it. Right? It's kind of a policy. It's like if you have somebody who's good at a job, right? You pay them more to do a job they don't know how to do. That's fun, I think. It mixes things up a little bit. See, I always thought it would be a good idea if we took our civil servants and we let them switch jobs so policemen were not always policemen. In the town I grew up in, they switched every 6 weeks from being policemen to either being a fireman or being a guy who drove an ambulance. So they weren't stuck in a rut. They actually changed constantly. And they had grades like you do in the military, because you can be a sergeant in the military and do one thing or do another. I knew one guy who was a cook who was a sergeant in the U.S. military. And another sergeant who all he did is blow things up. That was his job. He was a demolitions engineer. It's a great name, isn't it? Demolition engineer. And I thought I could use that concept somehow or other. Because there's some things that are worth demolishing. For example, the things that you fear. Some of you had free-floating fears. You had a fear of failure, a fear of this, a fear of that. And some people were afraid that they wouldn't learn to like themselves, right? And I'll tell you, if you start by making it so that you notice the things that feel good, and you start to think about yourself, probably you'll feel better about yourself. It'll just feel better to be inside your own fucking body. See, try something right now. Just curl your toes back. Take a deep breath as you do it. Keep the good feeling you have, but at the same time, let a feeling of smiling come up from your toes, all the way up your body, straight up to the corner of your mouth, and then all over the surface of your skin. And then begin to swirl it counterclockwise. And let it just spin around and spin around. And if you start to tingle, it's okay, I don't mind. And as it's going around, have it start to move so that it starts to move higher and higher. And then have it turn around the other way and spin in the opposite direction and begin to go down and down and down. And then reverse the direction and have it spin up and spin up. Because at this moment, what you're doing is succeeding at the most important task there is. The task of learning to generate your own feelings deliberately. Not because somebody tells you, oh, you're a bad boy. Right? Because I always say you should repeat that stuff inside your head and go, I was a bad boy. Because as soon as you change the tonality, it doesn't matter how people criticize you. People come in and go, you're a sexist pig. And you repeat it and you go, I was a sexist pig. Somehow or other, well, you sit there smiling and they go, what are you smiling about? And I go, what am I smiling about? Because just by repeating things in better tonality inside your head, then you don't have to feel bad. Because if you accept their tonality and they come in and go, then you have to feel bad. I mean, some people whine like a dental drill. And to me, I always go inside my head and repeat whatever they're saying and go, you dirty asshole, I hate your guts. Ooh. Don't ever speak to me again. I should be so lucky. I have people that come up and complain and they say, look, I don't agree with the things that you say. You know, you're criticizing my religion. You're criticizing my profession. What makes you think I'm going to stand for this? And I'll look at them and I'll go, I'm criticizing your religion. I'm criticizing you as a person. And that's because I know you can be a better person. See, if I didn't believe that you guys could change radically and quickly, that you can take, how many years had you been in pain?
25.
25. Do you know how to get out of it now? You're learning. How does it feel right now?
It's okay, yes.
It's okay. Okay's not good enough.
No, I know. It's
Right.
funny when I go
Okay, now, let me tell you to do something. Take a deep breath and just bend over. Right? Just like I did it with you. And imagine my finger right where I put it. And take another deep breath and slowly straighten it out. And keep breathing. And your body's going to want to twist a little bit this way and twist a little bit of that way. Add a little movement in. And say to yourself something. Say, ooh. And then repeat the mantra, soften, soften. Soften is such a great word that when dentists go to give you Novocaine, you know, that first shot really fucking hurts. I don't care what they say. Because usually my dentist comes in and goes, now this is really going to hurt a lot. And bang, and damn, he's usually right. But I taught my dentist at the moment that needle hits the roof of my mouth to say the word soften. Because people will respond, because if you go soften, the needle slides right in. This was good information to have when they said, oh, you are diabetic. Here's a big box of needles. Stab yourself all the time. And I said, oh, yeah. And they said, oh, and put some stuff in it when you do it now. Because I'm the guy that gave junkies phobias of needles for years. And I'm really suggestible. So, when they said, here's a box of needles, I went, ah! And they said, well, if you don't have these, you'll die. And I said, well, this is worth reconsidering. Because, I tried that getting close to death stuff too much as a teenager, Talk about making mistakes, I used to ask the question, like, how fast can this motorcycle go? And I found out, not as fast as I thought. But the motorcycle stopped, but I didn't. I saw a movie last night on television where this guy was flying through the sky. I was having a flying dream. And I know exactly what that's like, because I was doing about 130 on a Harley once. And I came around a corner, and somebody had put a trailer, just a flatbed trailer full of tools across the road. And that Harley hit that thing and just stopped cold. And I just went, launched into space. And I was still like this, only I was just flying, My legs had popped up behind me, so I was kind of out like this, flying through the air, looking at the road below me. And I had this voice inside my head that went, oh, shit, right? But it actually worked out pretty good because the road bent a little further, and I just went right into the sand in the desert, right? I got a mouth full of dust and a head full of cactus needles. But other than that, I was pretty good. I just looked like I'd been to the salon and had a really wild hairdo. But I came in and people said, wow, you saw that Pinhead movie, didn't you? Now, how does it feel now?
It's more comfortable.
It's more comfortable. Okay, we're still trying to get to the direction of making it so that it feels wonderful. See, you remember how you felt when you got out of pain? It felt wonderful. See, if you're measuring, you're saying, how much does it still hurt? This is what people do. Any of you in here do any body work? Right? Is this not what people do when you do? And you relieve their pain, and they come in and they do this. They go, well, if I move like this, it still hurts. Right? Yeah, I know, but they always do that, don't they? They come in and they go, this guy. What?
I didn't do that honest.
No, I have a feeling you went hopping through the streets of London.
No, I just walked.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
A lot further.
A lot further.
Yeah.
I went, well, now that I don't hurt, I can abuse myself. You know, and anyway, this guy that I worked on, whose back had the pins and then all the stuff in it, I worked with it and I made it so that he was out of pain for the first time in 2 years. And he can move his arm. And he called me the next day and told me, he said, the pain has returned. And I said, what did you do yesterday? And he said, I chopped a cord of wood. And I said, I did all this stuff to make your body better, and you went out and chopped a cord of wood? And you didn't think it would hurt? You haven't used the arm in a year. I said, if you just lifted up the axe 100 times, your arm would hurt. He said, no. He said, you know, I've been complaining to my wife that we haven't been able to use the wood in the fireplace. You know, the heating bills go up, so since I felt better, I thought I'd do something practical. I said, let me tell you what practical is. Practical is you chop a couple pieces of wood, and then the next day a couple more, and the next day a little more. You know, if you try to do things and you don't have the resources to do them, you will hurt yourself in any way. Businesses do that all the time. Instead of getting all the financing they need to do a project, they start the project and then try to find the financing. And they end up draining all of their resources that they need for other things. You see, you should always have everything you need. You have to have the talent. You know, this is an important part of projects. I found out lots of the laboratories got rid of creative people because they didn't show up on work on time, and they had erratic behavior, and got good, steady people, and then they were confused at why they couldn't develop the kinds of projects they were working on. So I kept a team of all the physicists that I found that were fired. And that's what my company had. It was the bizarrest place you'd ever want to go in, because it's funny. I couldn't get these guys to go home. They just stayed in the lab and played with the toys, you know. And I'd come in and I'd give them a new project, and I'd say, if you do this project, then I'll buy you this machine you want. I became an expert at buying things out of bankruptcy. I discovered there's a secret to that. You call up the newspaper when you see it and you say that you're from the company and they have the wrong date. You move, and so you move the date later, and so in the newspaper it says it's a week after it's going to happen, and you go in and you're the only one bidding, right? And I mean, I got beautiful stuff. I got a clean room, 15 lasers. I got a spectroanalysis machine. I got all this great office equipment. I have all this stuff, probably $1 million worth of stuff, and I bid $2,000. Right, but there was nobody else there. They said sealed bids, and I went, oh, I want that. But I didn't want it to go to waste. I mean, who in the world? I was doing laser holography, and we didn't have a great clean room and all this stuff. And here were all my physicists going, please, will you buy it for me, please? Sounded like my kids. Right, so I decided there had to be a way, because you can always find a way around everything if you have a positive aspiration. There are courses that teach you how to take vacations for next to nothing, if you want to take a vacation for next to nothing. To me, the goal of a vacation is not to find out how lousy of a resources you can have. You go, I'm going to go on vacation, and I'm going to go to a wonderful country with beautiful beaches, and I'm going to stay where I'm not anywhere near it. I'm going to eat the worst food. When I lived in Hawaii, what amazed me is every time I'd go to Honolulu, because I did a lot of business there, because I lived on the Big Island, and I'd fly 22 minutes over there and land, go down by Waikiki Beach. There's a huge, long line of people that came from all over the United States lined up outside a Sizzler. I mean, now, if they had actually gone a few blocks further into the marketplace where the people who lived there went, they could have gotten wonderful food, much better than anything they could get at Sizzler, and they had a Sizzler at home. By the way, you know, Sizzler was the first people to have demonic commercials. Did you guys ever see that? Did they play those over here? We had a wonderful ones in the U.S. They went, Sizzler. Dana, 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 dana. When you're hungry, go to Sizzler. And I thought it was pretty effective, but the reason people in Hawaii said Sizzler is a cheap place to eat, so I'll go there. And of course, then they would go and they would wait in line for 3 or 4 hours. And if they'd have just gone up the street to one of these little mom and pop places, they would have paid half the money and got twice the food. But then, of course, they still thought that Hawaii was a foreign country, even though they're from the U.S. We have a lot of fairly uneducated people. They still haven't accepted. They go, when I go back to the United States, They always say that in a way. They go, when I go back to the United States, it's like I made a mistake coming through customs. They said, how long are you going to be in Great Britain? And I said, well, I'm going to be in Great Britain for 5 weeks, and then I'm going to Scotland. And the customs guy leaned over and he said, that is Great Britain. And I said, oh, Scotland. No, I thought you gave it back. Didn't you give it back? Didn't I hear that? And he goes, it's still a part of Great Britain. So when you give it back, you still own it. I said, if I tried that with the bank, they would never work out. They go, here, I give you the money, but I get to keep it. And they would go, no, you give us your mortgage payment, and out of that whole mortgage payment, only this much comes off the principal, because the rest is interest. And we're interested in you. See, to me, it's better than no interest. See, or no doubt. See, a lot of times people say, well, no doubt. And suddenly I go, okay, I'm doubting it. So you have to watch out for how you program yourself. You always want to start, instead of avoiding things, you want to frame things to your own unconscious in a positive way. So if you start with that smile, and you begin to wash yourself in that smile, and then begin to make decisions. For example, I know there was a bunch of you that wrote about low self-esteem. At this moment, let me ask you to see if you can go inside, take the feeling you just had, based on looking at the successes in your life, and try and feel bad about yourself. See if you can do it. You'll find it's a lot more difficult. Can you do it? No?
Cannot do it.
Cannot do it. You're a failure. And now being a failure is a fucking good thing. Think about it. Isn't this twisted, all this stuff? See, I never thought you always were afraid of being a failure. Now, failing is really cool. Because if you fail to feel bad about yourself, then look at all the amount of time that opens up to be successful at the things that you want to do. Because if you think in terms of the sheer numbers of hours that people spend giving themselves a bad time, worrying about things, thinking about what can go wrong and all of these kinds of things. I mean, if you're in a profession where you have to plan for things, like if you're doing surgery, you should think about the mistakes that you made, because you don't want to clean them up later. It's, but you see, you should plan to the route that you're going to take. Heart surgeons, by the way, do the most boring job of all, because they do exactly the same thing to each person, exactly the same way each time. And they have like 550 million steps, and they literally go through the steps one at a time. And their concentration has to be so thorough that when I had a top heart surgeon as a client. This guy, this is not going to reassure you guys, but I want to tell you about him because he didn't pay me. He's the only client that never paid me. He heard from one of the psychiatrists at the hospital that had been referring me patients, and this guy was bringing me weirder and weirder patients just to see what I would do with them. I was like his hobby. He would like work all day, and then he'd go, take 2 of these and we'll go over to Richard's place and find out what they do. Bring a couple of friends along, have a couple of beers, and just dump these crazy people on me. And he brought one guy that was an enuretic. Here's a cool disease. When you see a bathroom, you don't feel like you have to go to the bathroom, but as soon as you don't see one, you feel like you have to pee totally. Right, And so enuretics are constantly worried about whether a bathroom is around. And I lived way out in the country at that time, about 13 miles from the nearest town. And the shrink brought this guy up, and he brought 2 of his friends. And then he told somebody else who arrived in another car, and they brought 2 of their friends. So there's 6 people that want to watch me work with this enuretic. And so he comes in and he sits down, and I had actually looked it up in the DSM because I didn't know what enurosis was. And it turns out enurosis has nothing to do with being enuretic. So I was totally prepared for the wrong thing. Because when I said to the psychiatrist, I said, so he has enurosis? And he goes, no. He goes, that's a totally different thing. And I went, oh, shit. So now I have to go, so what is an enuretic? And when he told me about it, I looked at the guy and I said, wow. I said, so you came all the way out here in the country, and if there's no bathroom, like you totally freak out and feel like you have to pee? And he went, yeah. And I said, because I don't have a bathroom. And as soon as the look on his face, he went, oh! And I anchored it. And I thought, cool. Right? And then I said, oh, I was just kidding. And I opened the door, and there's a bathroom. And he went, ah. And I went, and I anchored that. And I thought, now let's move this around, shall we? So then what I did is I had one of them stand over at the door, close the door, and I told him the bathroom has disappeared. Because it didn't look like a bathroom door. But then I'm funny. I like to change the doors in my houses. I make them all left-handed, and then watch the right-handed people make fools of themselves because they just can't cope. They go up, because the doors are all right-handed, and for left-handed people, that means you have to go this way. And so people go up and they go like this, and they go. They can't quite get it open. Something inside them goes, pull. Pull, don't push. Right? Even though the hinges are on the outside. All front doors open in, right? But they go up to my front door and they would constantly try to push it open just because the door handle's on the other side. They couldn't change their perspective. I would even say to them, it's a left-handed door, push it the other way. And they would go like this, okay. And they would take your other hand and they go, they'd still pull. I said, push, push. And they go, oh. And then they'd pull it open, say, because for some reason they got the push mixed up with the pull. Now you have trouble having low self-esteem. You failed at that.
I did.
Yes, you did. But did you want to get it back? Do you want to feel bad about yourself?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay, good. Just checking.
No, I don't.
Every once in a while, I do something I'm not supposed to. And, it's, to me, like I have clients that, I can see I had one person, I took away their phobia. And they had a terrible phobia of heights. And I had them go upstairs and hang off of a balcony. And then I had them go up even higher, 12 stories up, and hang off of a balcony. And they came back and they got on the stage. I had a couple of hundred people, and I was just demonstrating. And I said, so were you afraid? And he went, no. And I said, so you had no fear whatsoever? And he went, none. And he said, but I think it's just that my phobia is tired today. And I said, so you want to keep this phobia? I said, you want to be afraid of things? And he said, well, I'm used to it. Like, as long as it's comfortable, it's like an old shoe, it fits. He goes, he said, otherwise I'll be climbing stairs all the time. What a bother, This is a guy who couldn't get in planes and go anywhere. He couldn't even step onto the stage when I worked with him because it was this high. I mean, that's a real height phobia when you can't even go up one step. Now, how many of the rest of you did what I asked? Okay, the rest of you do it, and the rest of you don't know whether you did it or not. You're just here and you feel a little fuzzy and you don't know why. It's okay. You'll take what's appropriate. So you went through and started to line things up. Let's see, you even said that you were going in good directions and you wanted to go there faster. Now, when you want to go in a direction faster, see, for example, a lot of people wait for creative ideas to seep into their mind instead of going into the state that they've in the past gone into. But you see, a lot of people have trouble going back to states because they don't do it the easy way. They don't give themselves post-hypnotic suggestions. It's an easy thing. You see, it's as simple as that. But you see, once something's set up ahead of time, it just works just fine. I knew you would be trouble. Don't move. But you know what I have on the other hand, though, is a trance gun. Right? Everybody should have one of those. It's like this. It's like a big, long squirt gun. It just kind of comes out and wraps around you. I've seen some people just drop into such a deep trance, it's unbelievable. Can you feel what I'm saying? That's right. I know you're holding out, but I love it when they fight. You sit this close to me, you're doomed. But you see, to me, I always like to give people the opportunity to find just the right state. Because sometimes you need a state, a really good relaxation, to step into the states that are going to fulfill the things that you want to do. Some of you said that you really felt like you needed more motivation, right? And of course, if you need more motivation, I think it should come from inspiration. See, a lot of people try to do it. They go, I'm 35 years old and I'm only halfway to my goals. Well, you're not going to get there any faster if you have a heart attack. That's not going to help. So it's also when you go in and your doctor starts saying things like they go, your glycerin count is up. I don't even know what glycerins are, but I like counting them. And it's good. And they said, oh, your glycerin count is up. Well, my doctor goes in and goes, the way you live, you should have a terrible high blood pressure. And I go, no, no thank you. They told me when I got diabetes, they give you these pamphlets. They don't even just give it to you verbally, they give you pamphlets. And it says on there, 80% of diabetics will suffer impotence. And I thought, cool, I'm going to be the 20, man. I'm fuck this 80 shit. Those 80% aren't having any fun. You know, maybe they don't care, but it makes a difference to me. And so I told the doctor, I said, thanks for the pamphlet. I'm going to be part of the 20%. And she looked at me and she said, you know, you don't get to choose these things. And I said, of course you do. I said, you know, if they don't want the slot, I'm taking it. You know, it's just that simple. You know, it's like they told me, you know, it was a 1 in 100,000 chance. And I don't even know how they figure this stuff out. But they told me it's a 1 in 100,000 chance that I would be able to get back the feeling in my legs. And I said, okay, I'll take the 1, please. And they said, no, you don't understand. Those are your odds. And I said, well, I'm going to take the 1. I feel badly for the other people, but I'm taking the 1. Thank you very much. And they got really frustrated. They acted like I was being stupid. And I think it's a very intelligent choice. To me, I said, oh, okay, you know. See, for example, you know, as lots of men, as they get older, begin to suffer, you know, things like they say, men's sexual peak is at 17. And I'll tell you, if that's true, you're dating the wrong man. That's all there is to it. Because, you know, everything should get better with age. I always loved what Peter O'Toole said. I saw him on TV. He was being interviewed by this American who was kind of a crass guy, you know, trying to make clever jokes. And he said, well, you know, he says, you're so famous, you've made all these movies, you know, and the women find you so charming. And he said, you know, he said, I want to ask you, he goes, do you prefer blondes, redhead? He said, you know, you're a gentleman in England. He goes, you can have any woman you want. What's your preference? And he just looked at him with utter disgust and he said, gentlemen prefer women with gray hair and silver hair. He said, young boys prefer blondes and redheads. Right? And he looked at him like this, like, and we know who we're talking about now. Right? And the guy went, But Peter O'Toole is not a guy that gets stressed out. That's one of the things I like about him. How he can do all of this bizarre stuff. He was in a place in London, apparently at a theater, and he went in and there was a huge long line of men in the men's room, you know, drinking all that beer over here. And he just couldn't take it anymore, so he turned around and walked into the ladies' room. There was a woman walking out of the ladies' room, and she looked at him and she said, sir, she said, yeah, this room is for ladies. And he went, shh, and he goes, and so is this, ma'am, but right now I need to run a little something through it. Amen. I listened to that and I thought, here's a guy who does not get stressed out. You know, he doesn't let a little thing like a sign bother him. He just does what he needs to do. And, you know, the thing is that, see, some people talked about lacking confidence. Okay, if you focus on your lack of confidence and you wonder where you're going to get it, it makes it mysterious. But yet you're utterly confident about this, which means you already know what confidence feels like. And if you can generate the feeling of confidence and then begin to think about the tasks that you want to do, then you will start planning them. See, for example, who in here would like to have more confidence about the things they do? I like it. And I like it. Confidence. I like, some of you call it self-confidence. To me, I don't know what the hell difference those are, but you know, there's the confidence game. That's different. But if you'd like that, try something. What I want you to do is in your mind, go back and think of something you do really well. Okay? And then think of something that you don't do very well. See, and those are two things that you are confident about. Because if you do something well and you know it, you're confident. If there's something you don't do well, for example, my Japanese sucks, right? And I went into this situation. I worked for the Japanese embassy, and I tried really hard, like, to learn a little of their language because they don't really like speaking English. But they hired me to take these young executives around and teach them to become more Americanized. And they figured, what better wacko than me to do that? You know, they had a CEO who thought, he looked around and he said, these ones in suits can teach us nothing. Give them to the wacko. And they made these poor guys who were so rigid, they were like, Like this, you talk about stress. Boy, the Japanese have got the market on that. Boy, they're popping executives off right and left. And you know how expensive executives are? I get paid to repair them. It's one of the things that I do. That's like a thing that one of my jobs is I get hired to go in and repair a CEO or a high executive in a company. Because when he gets so strung out, he starts drinking and his family life is falling apart. You know, and his doctor says if he doesn't smoke less and he doesn't drink less, you know, he's gonna, I like that they go, they're gonna have a heart attack. Those are suggestions to help him out. Doctors like to kill you with words every chance they get. And it's part of their training, they're taught. And it's required in the US by the insurance companies. They have a law now called informed consent, where they have to tell you every bad thing that could possibly happen to you with every procedure and every drug they give you. The law does not require that they tell you every good thing that could happen, just the bad stuff. So doctors have to sit there, and so I teach doctors to be incongruent, because you don't want to walk up to a woman and say, you know, I'd really like to meet you. You know, because odds are she's not going out with you. Odds are she's going to be calling the police. Ding, ding. It's that 911. We have a real wacko here. But you see, for doctors, as long as somebody's requiring them to tell things like, well, you know, that a certain number of people when they take this, you know, experience heart palpitations, instead of doing it, they can go, well, you know, a certain number of people when they take this experience, you know, heart palpitations. You know, and if they do it that way, they're not likely to induce it. See, the same thing is true when you're in business and you're giving instructions. Some of the instructions you give, you want to give real congruently. I found that, you know, if I gave real short, direct commands, that I got good results. Like, do this or I'll fire your fucking ass. I found out that was one of the ways to get things done. And I said, don't make me explain it. Just fucking do this or I'll fire your ass. You got 20 minutes to do it and you come back and tell me that it's done. Otherwise, come back here and I'll punch out your clock. Think about it. I never said time card. I always said your clock. It's an idiom in English. And I go, now, do you understand? And they would go like that and go and do it. But sometimes you need things done that way. But on the other hand, there were things sometimes that I would tell people that would be ruts that I had seen that other people got into before, making the same kind of mistake. I go, a lot of people who have this job, you know, are apt to do things a certain way, right, which doesn't work. And I know sometimes people are nervous, like people don't like to cold call on the phone. A lot of salespeople don't realize that the trick is to be able to sell to any kind of people, not just certain people. Because, you know, everybody buys stuff, so it has to be possible to sell stuff to everybody. So if you find there's people that you can't sell things to, then it's like you're in the university of life. Those are the very people that you have to learn to adjust your behavior with. Because if what you're doing isn't working, the more you do it, the more it won't work. So those are the ones where you have to try things that you would never do. And we tried some strange ones when we were developing a sales training course. We went down to a furniture store, and it was on a freeway in Texas, and in fact, it was so far to the next place. They had one on the other side of the road, 2 miles up, because you just couldn't get off the exit and go back. It was like 20 miles either way. I mean, these places were in the middle of nowhere, so the furniture was cheap, but it wasn't cheap furniture. It was good stuff, but since they didn't have any overhead, because land was like a nickel for 1 million acres out there, you know. So it turns out, though, that they had these little red ants that ate the buildings. Isn't that spooky? It's a little red ants, and they ate the building. So they had to come out and get these exterminators, and the more they tried to get rid of the red ants, the worse they got. But eventually they all left and went to that big multi-zillion billion dollar round linear accelerator the U.S. built. It's supposed to be one of the highest tech scientific projects on the face of the earth. And they've never been able to use it because all the red ants went there. Went superconductor. Good. Yeah, it turns out they love to eat plastic. They've mutated so that their favorite food of choice is fiberglass. And wait till these things get into the yacht harbors, because there's all those boats sitting in the yacht harbors not going anywhere. Every country I've ever been in, this is true. There's harbors full of boats not going anywhere. And I wonder, these people buy these big boats and they don't go anywhere in them? The yacht harbors are full. It's not like there's a lot of empty slips. There'll be like 2 empty slips, and they're like 2 people that actually use their boat, and the rest of them just pay for it and wash it, you know. And they said, well, in order to sail one of these yachts, you have to have a whole crew of people and somewhere to go, I guess. When I was in Seattle, I had never seen such big yachts, 90, 200 feet, you know, helicopter pads, greenhouses, swimming pools. They're like cities. And they park them inside on top of everything because it's bad weather up there. I guess you don't want to get rain on your yacht because after all, it might not be waterproof. I was a little confused about them building these big giant things to put their yacht inside of. They actually leave the sides open. They just put a roof over it because the sides, I guess, are waterproof. But because when you're out on the ocean, if it starts to rain, what do? I don't know. Put plastic over the top. I thought boats were supposed to be pretty much waterproof all around, although there are people that drill holes in them to let the water out. Now, if you stop for a moment and you begin to consider that the states that you want to get to, whether it's a state of total enthusiasm, whether it's a state of relaxation. See, I like to do things like I spent lots and lots of time learning to control my heart rate. And I did that because I did yoga, and I also tried biofeedback equipment. It's one of the things I worked with a lot. People had me come in, and I went into all these big biofeedback stuff, and I found out if I watched the heart monitor, right, and the numbers on it, and it was going 68, right, and I tried to do things that would go 78, 88, and the more I tried to make it go down, the faster, 101, you know. And then when I'd get frustrated and I'd forget about it, it would drop down on its own. Well, I went inside and switched the chips inside of the machines because this measuring things by comparing is a really unpleasant strategy. I worked with an Olympic runner, and it turned out his strategy for running these races is that in his mind, he would see someone in front of him, and he would pace himself from that person. So, of course, he never came in first, because he was programming himself to have someone in front of him at the end of the race. You know, when he told me this, I said, we got to get rid of that person. We have to kill them. And he went, what? And he said, well, they're just in my mind. I said, yes. But if in your mind you have yourself placed behind people, you'll always end up behind people. And I said, it's really what you need to do is to stop thinking about the others, and you need to learn to exceed your own personal best. Because, see, if you compare not where you are, but how fast you're getting to where you want to go, it's a whole different equation. It's actually called a second derivation. So that with biofeedback, instead of measuring how quickly you're driving yourself down, and so that the closer you get to alpha, it actually has a one-on-one relationship. So as you relax and go deeper and deeper and deeper, the tone goes down and down and down. If instead you measure so that the tone goes down, the faster you get to alpha. So the quicker you're going to alpha, the lower the tone gets. Suddenly, within a matter of moments, you'll be able to alter your state. One of the reasons why, when I do workshops like this, that I begin, it's okay, you can go into trance anytime you want, Brian. It's like, but if you find yourself there and you don't know how you got there, it's probably just a coincidence. Of course, this is Earth Coincidence Control Center. So, but when you do drop inside, just remember that one of the things is it's your way of your unconscious saying, hey, this is a moment where I can do something and change myself for the rest of your life. Some of you somebody said they wanted to be addicted to reading. That's a really cool addiction to have. See, addictions are not necessarily bad. It's an expensive one. It gets to be an expensive. My book habit has really gone out of line, you know. So, and his is terrible too. You know, because he goes online to that Amazon.com, you know. Oh my God. It's all you have to do is push a button, you know. Takes it right out of your bank account. You don't feel the thing, you know. It's like the next thing you know, they're just crates arriving at your door. Right? And I don't even know if I ordered the books. That's the thing is they could just like analyze the kind of books I was buying and send me similar ones. I did get a kind of a kick out of it. I don't like buying stuff offline because I like having the things right now. I like going in the stores and getting things. To me, I think that's cool, and especially clothes. You can't feel them. You wouldn't know what they would feel like. And to me, when I open a book, I want to read a little of it and see if it falls into the category of interesting, possible new information or total fucking bullshit. And so I always open up the end and I read backwards through the book, page by page for, maybe 20 pages real quick. But I read real fast because if you're going to be addicted to books, the best way to do it is to consume them quickly. See, I have a thing that just goes through, but I don't read with internal dialogue. See, lots of people try to read and they have a voice reading out loud in their head, which means speed reading is talking fast. So instead of going, well, Jack and Jill went up the hill, you go, Jack and Jill went up the hill, which makes reading so stressful you won't want to do it. On the other hand, if you learn to trust the force, long-term memory and short-term memory are about 20 minutes apart. Since short-term memory is not what you're after, you just go ahead and let the stuff flow in. I mean, you don't have to say stop when you see a stop sign in the U.S. It says on it, S-T-P, S-T-O-P. And we have signs that say yield, which means don't fucking pull out in front of the other cars. They'll hit you, which is always a good idea. We have signs that say this, slippery when wet or frosty. Big surprise. I think people should know that before they get a license. I lived on a road, big windy road. It's the steepest road in the United States. It was called Alba Road and named after something in Scotland. But the name of the town was Ben Lomond, so there was a pattern there somewhere. Scots left, the highlands of Scotland and went all the way across the U.S. and found a place exactly like it, And they did things like they had Scottish pipes, and there were Scottish people, families that had been there for hundreds of years. But I moved up on the top of this road, and here's the intelligence of human beings. They had a bicycle race there every year going up. This road is like this. It goes 4 miles, 3,000 feet up. I mean, and that's a steep, steep road. I only lived a mile up it. And I used to go out when they had the bicycle route, when they had the bicycle thing, and I'd go, "You're going the wrong way." And they'd what? And I go, "You're supposed to go downhill. It's a lot faster that way." And they go, "But the race is uphill." And I said, "Yes, but the wisdom is downhill." You see, to me, if you're riding a bicycle up a very steep hill just because you want to do something difficult, this is like weightlifting. This is a sport that confuses me, because it seems to me if something's too heavy, you shouldn't pick it up. You shouldn't spend your whole body and distort it into a big gunky thing so you can pick up something way too heavy. And it's not even something you're going to find when you go out in the world. There just aren't barbells laying around. It's not like I get up to my house and there's a fucking barbell in front of the door and I go, "Damn, these things are everywhere." I have to jerk that sucker up and throw it away, To me, it should be the person who figures out how to lift it with the easiest wisdom, so that you can find ways of lifting it. Like people found out levers worked. That was the beginning of the field of physics. They went, we can put a little thing here and go like that. It's easier than just trying to lift it. So it should be the weightlifter who comes up and puts a 2x4 on a rock and lifts it that way. Longer the 2x4, the easier it is to lift. They found equations for this. And then they discovered that they could expand physics. They said, well, if we have one idea that works, maybe we could do another. We could fill those big weights with hydrogen and use titanium shells on the outside. They'll lift themselves. Lighter than air vehicles is one of the things that's coming in the future. And by the way, they look like flying saucers. I thought that was a good marketing decision. They hold about 8 people. They have a turbine engine in them. They have stabilizers, just like blimps do, so smooth, easy ride. And they made these things. They do about 60 miles per hour, shaped like a flying saucer, and the only thing is when you get to your house, you have to tie it down, because it has a titanium cell and lighter than air stuff in it. Their plan was to be able to have these things so you would drive them above existing highways. They wanted, kind of like in the Jetsons, to stack up the highways, and they actually tried to get this in the U.S., and of course, the bean pushers in office said, no, we can't crowd the skies with these things. It might take traffic off the roads. It was something that was ahead of its time. It said, but we could use these for spying. Could we make them remote control, take the people out of them, make them smaller, and float them out? So now all around Florida, There's a little flying saucers about this big going out there that the DEA bought a whole ton of these things, right? They have cameras in them, looking for people smuggling things. Of course, the people smuggling things are looking for the flying saucers. They have radar. They have everything now because we've made them all so wealthy. In fact, they actually have bought the paint that they use on the stealth bomber. And they paint their boat, the boat engine, everything in there. So when you look on radar, there's just a guy going across the water like this. So now the DEA knows, oh, look at that, there's a person flying through the air. There must be a boat there, an invisible boat. I wanted to paint my car with that stuff. And I called the factory where they make it, and you're not allowed to buy it. You can't buy it to put on airplanes. But you can buy it and paint your car with it. Right, so which I thought was cool, but they didn't tell me that you have to paint everything. I didn't realize you have to paint every single thing. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. It's just, then you paint just the outside, and then there's an engine and a drivetrain going down the road. They can still go 80 miles an hour, give them a ticket. I'm really lucky. I haven't gotten tickets in probably 15 years. I used to get them all the time. But then one day, I was sitting there and I was parked, and this guy was shooting a radar gun. And every time he'd go up with like this, I could feel it. It felt a certain way. And I went, who wants to buy a radar detector? I want to be one. So I went into a deep trance. I just started to relax. I thought, I'm going to take the feeling of this radar. I'm going to make it so every time I feel it, that unconsciously I don't exceed the speed limit. That, and it's there. And I can feel them coming now. I've done this for so many years, but all I did is I programmed myself to be successful the way I wanted to. Because, Joan doesn't want to go and get lost again like she did. She left the last seminar feeling wonderful, and then, she'd get too much junk in her closet, and she'd get whacked out behind it. And suddenly she was so stressed out and worried about her closet. Just going, oh, look at all the things I have in my closet. I haven't got room for other things. What will I do? And you can just get another closet. You can do what I did. I rent closets in other people's houses and put stuff in it. I have a public storage place. I have these big storage places that I put stuff in. I haven't even looked at in 20 years, but I know it's there. It's safe, right? Pretty soon I'm just going to sell it as an archaeological project. And they can slice through it, take a slice of it, and look what my life was like in 1965. I'm scared. I'm going to go in there, though. I decided this year sometime I'm actually going to go in the storage things and see what's in them, because it's grown in number. I have 9 now. Well, it's always those things. I lived in a 30,000 square foot house, and it was the best deal in San Francisco, where you can get like a 1-bedroom apartment for $3,000. Right? I had a guy that when the Philippine embassy was given up, because Marcos kind of left power suddenly, and for some reason they didn't want the embassy in San Francisco. They decided they were going to abandon it. And when they abandon it, it no longer remains the property of the country. It reverts back to whoever sold it to them in the first place. And so this reverted back to a guy who had built it years and years and years ago. He was about 85 years old. And he had been a client of mine years ago. He called me on the phone and he said, Richard, he said, do you still live in that 2-bedroom apartment? And I said, no. I said, I live in a different 2-bedroom apartment. I said, but that was many years ago. And it wasn't even in this town. And he said, well, I had just got back this property, and he said, I want you to come and take a look at it. I really need somebody to live there. And he said, what do you pay rent now? And I said, I pay $800 a month. He said, I'll rent it to you for $800 a month. So I went over and I rented this place, and it's the only time I've ever had my own ballroom. So it's kind of a different thing to have in your house. It's the only time that I had a kitchen that had 3 barbecues and 5 ovens and 3 refrigerators, and a big chopping block, dumbwaiters that went all over the place, and a dining room that would sit 40 if I had a table. And I kept buying things when I had this big house. We lived in it the whole time my kids were growing up. And then one day they put a note on the door. I actually was in Australia. I found it when I got back. It was a 30-day notice that the Filipinos had decided to take it back. So I had to move out of a 40,000 square foot house. That's because I also had a 10,000 square feet of buildings in the back, which my wife discovered, that you could buy things and stick in there. In fact, my wife has never left me an empty drawer. You guys ever notice that? There are no such thing as empty drawers. It's a sin, isn't it? My wife looks and she goes, there's an empty drawer, we'll buy things and put it in there. And it doesn't matter, because I used to build more and more cabinets, more and more shelving, and it was just being a fool, you know, because I should have just nailed them all closed and said there, put a sign on them, full. Because this also counts for my closet, right? See, because we had these lovely things. She had her own big closet, and then we have a place with some of my clothes and the rest of her stuff. But then she has a lot more. She has to change her clothes a lot more often than I do because she cares about it and I don't. I don't have a seersucker suit, but I'll tell you, I discovered with me that one of the things that happened is I get really frustrated. I buy really nice clothes and you send them to the fucking dry cleaners in these hotels and they come back, you know, and they didn't dry clean them, they washed them, right? I had a suit that I bought that came back, it would have fit a 5-year-old. You know, hand-tailored by Savoy tailors. Lovely thing, you know. And it's worth all this money, and there's people, and they said, I said, what did you do to my suit? It shrank, and they said, no, you gave it to us this way. It's right here on the ticket, one suit. Here it is. And I said, I can't wear this. It's half the size I am. And they said, well, you know, they said, this is not our problem. We dry cleaned it. And you rub it, and there's no dry cleaning fluid on there. And I said, there's no dry cleaning fluid. I said, you shrank my suit. I want you to buy me a new one. And they said, no, you gave us this. This obviously is a child's clothing. Do you have children? And I said, yeah, but my son is 6'4". Used to be I yelled at him like this, and then I yelled at him like this, and then I went, uh-oh. He's a nice kid, though. He's not like his father. Children always rebel. My children are nice. Now, if you stop and you start to think, okay, if you can go in and build for yourself a separator state, because one of the things that makes it difficult for people to make the transition, like if they want to become really more motivated and they want to be drawn to getting certain things done, or they want to be drawn to trying new things, or they want to go into states when where they get stuck, where they start creative solutions. Because basically, all of the things that are on your list, or most of them, except a few of you had back pains and things. There were some other people who had back pains. Who were you? Yeah. What kind of back pains do you have?
Lower right-hand side.
Lower right-hand side? How long have you had it?
About 4 years.
4 years? Been to a chiropractor?
Yes.
Right.
Once, shortly.
Did they ever do that thing? I don't like that thing when they... No, I hate that. I never do that stuff. That's not good for you. That's lying to your muscles. Whenever you do muscle override and they snap it like that, well, to begin with, I don't think it's good, because what it is instead of teaching your muscles what to do, it sneaks your skeleton over and then the muscles pull it back. They go, we're over here, and pulls it right back out. So you have to keep getting adjusted, readjusted, instead of building the feedback mechanism that makes it so that you move your body in a way where it doesn't hurt. And you have to know ahead of time. So you can't do too much and then go, Jesus, I shouldn't have done that. You know, that's like if your nose was over your butt, then you would go, God, I shouldn't have eaten those, right? But if it's over your mouth, you can smell things, and some things your body will just say, do not put this in. And when you get cravings for certain foods, right, especially weird things, you know, this happens to women when they're pregnant a lot, but that's because your body has to know how to pull all these minerals, all these different things together and make a whole human being. But you see, you're always making a whole human being. And a lot of the trace elements that humans have are the things that control everything else. And medical science hasn't paid much attention to trace elements, but they've worked on the big stuff first, and I don't blame them. I think that's a good idea. Broken leg, somebody I know in Florida took a whole bunch of these surgeons and he gave them carpentry lessons. Got a guy who was a perfect furniture-making carpenter, and he went in and they took a bone from a skeleton and they busted it. And they had this guy put it back together, and they all watched it. This guy made mitered edges. He put that puppy back together. It was stronger than when it went apart. And to me, you know, because like the pin in my knee, they just cut it at an angle like this and put a pin across it that way. So it still has shearing force. And so, you know, I wake up in the morning, typically it's slipped about this far. I can feel it poking out of my skin, and I have to take a book and pound it back in. But that's because I didn't have medical insurance. I'm sure they had better ways of doing it. But they looked at me and they went, no medical insurance, you know. Put him in the parking lot, let the mechanics do it. And go, you ambulance drivers, you're not doing anything? How about a little surgery over here? You know, you do some surgery over here and we'll give you some free pills. Because doctors have a lot of pills. Me, my favorite pills of all are placebos. Because number one, they've done more research on placebos than anything. For every drug they've measured it against placebos. So we really know more about placebos than anything. I actually at one time collected all the things that placebos had successfully treated. Put together a big booklet because, you know, it said, you know, 9 out of 10 times, you know, a placebo works as well as aspirin for getting rid of headaches. And so my thing was take 11 just to be safe. They're just empty horse caps, so you know, it's not like it really matters how many you take. It's not like they have a negative effect on you unless you get bad placebos. If you get bad placebos, you know, it's that thing like people say, if you get some bad acid, you know, you'll be tripping out weird for the rest of your life. And I went, really? But you see, the direction in which you go, it's a good idea to have a state that you can go into that's a deep one. Now, let me ask you this: if you take a simple old technique, can you go into a trance deep enough to set up finger signals?
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
What do you ask sometimes, and it just goes "fuck you" like that, you know? The finger signals I have yes and fuck you. You know, I don't fuck around with no because I won't accept no as an answer. Try something for me. Let me show you something. Just put your hands together flat like this. You know this induction? Right, like that one, except you keep your palms together. Yeah. Only what we're going to do is we're going to do a little together differently. Lock your hands together like this. You guys can try this if you want. It's loads of fun. But your palms have to be all together and your palms have to stay together. Okay? And then hold it up in front of you. Take your index fingers and pull them apart. And then look straight through the middle, and when you do, it'll pull your fingers together. But this time, what I want you to do is to just keep staring through it, and the closer your fingers get, the more I want you to begin to look over the top, right? And then what I want you to do is inside your head, just go and ask your own unconscious. Say, look, some part of me is stopping me from having satisfying experiences. Because the problem is not the quality of the flowers. You can smell the fucking things, for Christ's sake. You know, that's not a good enough hallucination for me. Well, let's stop and smell the roses, shall we? Maybe what it is that you're generating a sensation inside yourself that doesn't satisfy you. That if you had the feeling of satisfaction and appreciated the fact that you could see as much as you can, smell as much as you can, then maybe your unconscious could signal yes or no, this way. So if you pull your fingers just a little bit apart, right, and feel the catalepsy coming through the fingertips, that part where you realize that your unconscious can move those fingers. And I want your unconscious to begin now to either fire up the yes finger. There you go. That's right. And then what I want to do is ask your unconscious if it'll go inside your mind and find a really satisfying time. That's right. I get along with people's unconscious. And now I want your unconscious to go and take that feeling of satisfaction, and I want it to begin to take responsibility for drilling it all through your body. I want it to come from where it normally starts. I want it to spread. And the more you begin to feel the satisfaction, the more I'm going to ask your unconscious if it will begin to make those vases a little more solid. That's right. It knows whether or not it's ready to do that. But see, as long as you're satisfied with what you have, then you're entitled to more. It's not when you whine and complain and see people come up and go, but I can't see my pictures. And I go, so you're blind, deaf, and dumb. Then I make it so their right foot goes numb and their left ear falls off. My thing is if you can't take the good feelings you have and make them bigger, then you might as well make the bad ones as large as possible. But you see, I think that's just people who have far too much time on their hands. So go ahead now. I'll ask your unconscious, is it ready to do this, or does it need a little time? If it needs a little time, give me a twitch now. There you go. All right, close your eyes. That's right. Let your unconscious go inside and begin to take the feeling of satisfaction and spin it more. Because it would be such a drag if it made it twice as dense and you went, still it's not perfect. You know, that's, what's going to happen is that you're going to find a woman with a strategy like that. And no matter what she's going to do, she's going to go, I'm still not satisfied. And you go, but dear, it's been 5 hours. And it goes, yeah. So you want a quickie, I want a full experience. There's a part right here in my body that hasn't orgasmed yet. It's right behind the left eye. Right? That's right. Now, when your unconscious is ready, I want you to drop deeper, way deeper. Let your unconscious take you down. You've been doing this consciously too much. You're one of those smart Alecs that thinks your conscious mind does everything. If you could fucking beat your own heart with a hand pump, you'd do it. They have those for penises. I saw it in a magazine once. You get a hand pump and you pump your penis up. It was. If you go to this surgical place and they put a thing inside your penis, and then when you're ready to have sex, you just take a little hand pump and you go, and your penis goes. None of the joys of erection, but it works mechanically every time. Takes all the sensation out of your dick, however, right? But then you become like a mechanical bull, and it says you'll be able to satisfy any woman. All you need to do is while you're having sex, you make this sound. See, much better you let your unconscious know how to do this. So let your unconscious start with the fingertip and take a feeling and let it run down your arm and then begin to spread around. Let it spin counterclockwise and then come up the other arm and through the finger and back down around because your finger was in trance. And if your finger can go into trance, we know it can spread. And the more it spreads, the deeper you'll go. And if you take a deep breath, feel yourself float down. Quit trying to think about it and shut the fuck up inside your head. God, you're talking too much. Hum. Go. Down I'm going to go. Into a trance I know. That's right. Take a little time. See, I know you're unconscious right now. Can signal me that it's just going to let you fall. That's right. It knows how to do that because you go into trances all the time as long as you're not paying attention. Then it's easy. But as soon as you notice and you look for it, boom, then you spoil it. It's not having your conscious mind monitor things that makes them special. It's when your conscious mind slips inside of your unconsciousness and you just drift and drift. Now I find that if I do this at the same time, whether or not your mind realizes it or not, suddenly something is going to begin to happen because it's that time of day. It's the time that I feel playful. See, we crossed the noon mark. That thing, I used to get up at the crack of noon every day. And then it was time to begin to play, because if you take a good feeling and you start to drift down, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to begin to find that no matter what you think, you're going to start slipping and slipping and slipping. Because it doesn't matter now anymore. It's only about taking the time to relax. Somebody told me in their page that they had their jaw muscles so tight that they just didn't know what it felt like to relax totally. But if you try to think it through, it's just not gonna do. You have to let go of your head. That's right. Stop talking and start listening. Even if English is not your native tongue, it doesn't matter. Unconscious talk is all the same. It's just knowing what it feels like and feeling more of it. Because the more you can let go of the tension, the more you let go of the worry, the more you just make it so your head stops being so stiff and just relaxes all the way, here and there and here and there, and just keep breathing, because no air, no action. So that if you let yourself float down a little, don't float back up and examine it. It's one of those things you got to cook all the time, slow in its juices. Because if you let yourself go down and you let yourself float down, one of the things you'll find. Now I'm going to reach over and I'm going to grab this guy's left arm and I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to tell him not to put it down. Because what I want you to do is to feel it begin to pull up towards your face again. Only this time I want you to remember what it's supposed to do. And I'm going to get back to you, Josie, in a minute. And when I do, I want to find something. But in the meanwhile, I'm going to lift up this arm. And I want to tell you that when you do, I'm going to put a trance right in your wrist, just like that. And when you feel it pulled towards your face, one of the things it's going to do is it's going to begin to start tingling. Instead of worrying about the bad spot, let's make all the rest of you feel totally wonderful. Right? So you begin to get these great feelings that come unexpectedly from places you don't even know about. And the more you get those feelings, the more you begin to feel differently. And I'm going to lift up another arm because there's plenty of them in this room. That's why I have a cordless mic and you don't. Because, you see, I can feel your pulse when I do this. In fact, I can hear your pulse. And when I do, I want you to tell you that there are things that you know that you need to do. And I want your unconscious now to begin to make it so that you go deeper and deeper still. And begin to feel the fact that you learn to do things that you do unconsciously perfectly. When you learn to ride a bicycle, you could ride it without a thought. When you learn to drive a car, you get to the point where you drive a car and you talk to people at the same time, listen to the radio. God, some people talk on the phone. And most of the time, you do it perfectly. And it's that most of the time I'm interested in when you learn to do things more automatically. Because you see, if you sit in a way that causes tension, it doesn't matter where it starts. It can always end up being a pain in the back. But if you just sit forward a little bit like this, here you go. And we're going to put something inside your back right there. And even though it's not the place that hurts, it's a place that's going to start feeling good right here. But there it goes. And take the feeling and let it start to move throughout your body. And this time when you sit up, feel the gravity and start to shift your body, and you realize that you can make it so that it begins to feel wonderful and tingle in places you haven't tingled in years. Because it's only through feeling more intensely that you actually get these things to go away. That's right. That's right. You just need to go deeper. That's right. Relax. There you go. All the way down. Make it so that you loosen up your head. I find many of you have your head screwed on way too tight. There you go. Down even deeper. That's right. Take a little tingling. Start it here. And let it start to spread. You don't always have to start in the same place. You can start your feelings in your knees. And if you said, what can feel good in a knee? Well, we all have needs. And if you let your needs begin to tingle and spread, you'll find yourself beginning to plan and look at your own future and start to find the things that will make it so you feel better more of the time. That's right. That's a conscious arm. I know one when I feel one. Sitting here pretending, that's not going to help. That's a little hyperhidrosis there. Worried, he goes, oh God, he's got my hands. Oh, but it's no sweat. Trust me. What the things that will happen is if you just trust it yourself and let your unconscious go a little bit, you take all that internal dialogue and go, uh-oh, uh-oh. That's right. Just let go of your head. It unscrews sometimes. You know, they say people have a screw loose. It's not a bad thing. Sometimes you got screws that have tight ideas inside your mind, and if you just let go, That's right. Then you begin to find, there it is. It's okay. Your unconscious can hold it up there. You know, it's done it all the time. If you had a purse in it, it would hold it there for 5 hours. It's not an unusual experience. That's right. Now, as you sit there, and I know some of you are going into trance, some of you are drifting out, some of you are drifting in and coming out. Yes, I understand. We'll get around to you later, you guys who hide in the back too much. Stop it. He even heard the hypnotic suggestion. How about that? They're getting clever behind my back. That's right. Here. Since you're not using this, I think I will. That's right. There you go. See if we can't loosen this up a little bit. There we go. Let's get some of those tight asshole ideas out of you. You know, there they go. There we go. Now, let your unconscious do the work. You've been trying consciously to force all this stuff, and there's some things you just can't force. You have to let them come on their own. Now, if you start with one good feeling right there, take a deep breath, right, and it can start from here. Just feel a little spinning here, a little spinning there, all towards the midline. It'll build you a wonderful kind of energy. There you go. Because energy is what it's all about, because human beings are chemical energy at work. It's not nothing you've ever seen. How you doing? You doing okay? Mm-hmm. Good. You can keep your eyes open if you want to. You're allowed to. They're your eyes. If it makes you feel better, but if you're just thinking and thinking and thinking, it might be better if you tried something different. To begin with, just let the tension go. Say, out of here. We don't need you no more. That's what it means. Instead of intense, it'll be out tense. And people say, what happened to all that stress that you used to have? You say, I left it in the Grosvenor Hotel. I didn't need that tension anymore. Or else you can take it with you and place it in the appropriate person at the appropriate time. See, because if you're going to stiffen up, I recommend you do it in a particular place and under certain circumstances. And the rest of the time, just begin to relax. That's right. Holy shit. My God. It's a steel back there. These are supposed to be soft. Let your unconscious soften them up. That's right. The rest of you just keep drifting down. Soften, soften, soften. That's right. And very slowly let your hand go down at the rate and speed that you begin to remember what it is that you don't need anymore. And begin inside your mind to make a promise to yourself, the kind you keep. See, like have you promised yourself that you'd find a restroom within a certain period of time and succeeded? Because you put every ounce of energy into it. It became all-consuming, so to speak. And if you think of that sensation of where you make a commitment to yourself, you know, it's the next thing I'll do, I'll find a restroom. And as you head towards that rest room, then what happens is I want you to begin to make another promise to yourself. I want you, nice shoes. I love shoes. My wife taught me to appreciate shoes. I used to hate them because they were everywhere and they weren't mine. And so now I started buying shoes that are comfortable and then shoes that are just absolutely uncomfortable, but they look really cool, especially in the closet. That's right. See this? Soften. You guys in your neck muscles, you didn't put that on your list. You should have said, I want to take the steel bars out of my neck. You know you're next, Stuart. You can't help but be next. You're just right here. How about you?